So, what if I told you there's a powerful ancient blueprint for building a successful society? And what if that blueprint was lost for centuries, only to be rediscovered right now? Well, that's the pretty audacious claim at the heart of a book by Sutton called That You May Prosper. He's basically arguing that this exact blueprint has been found, and it has a name, the Covenant.
The book actually kicks off with this really gripping scene. Okay, so picture this. A young king, Josiah, orders an audit of his kingdom's treasury. His scribes are moving these huge chests of gold around, and they find something else. Tucked away, all dusty, is an ancient manuscript. Now you'd think finding a historical artifact would be a good thing, right? Wrong. When it's read out loud to the king, he doesn't celebrate. No, he cries out, literally tears his royal robes, and just falls on his face in front of his entire court.
So, what on earth was in that manuscript? I mean, what could possibly cause a king to react like that?
Well, the book's argument is that King Josiah had just stumbled upon what's called the Book of the Covenant. And this thing, it wasn't just some boring list of laws. No, it was a complete model for national prosperity under God. It was basically a lost instruction manual for civilization itself, which the author identifies as the biblical book of Deuteronomy.
Okay, so that's the ancient story, but it actually brings us to a much more modern mystery. The book's preface points out this huge irony. For literally hundreds of years, a major branch of Christian thought, known as covenant theology, has been around. But here's the crazy part. Nobody could precisely define what a biblical covenant is. Think about that. It was the central idea, the whole point, yet its basic structure was still a total puzzle.
And that is the exact problem this book claims it's here to solve. It puts forward this super clear 5-point structure, basically saying, hey, here's the key that finally unlocks the whole thing. The goal is to make the biblical covenant not just understandable, but more importantly, something you can actually use. All right, so what is this rediscovered master blueprint? According to the author, it's not some crazy complex philosophical system. Instead, it's a surprisingly simple 5-part structure that you see repeated over and over again all throughout the Bible.
So here they are, the 5 pillars of this covenant model. You've got 1, transcendence, that's all about who's ultimately in charge. 2, hierarchy, the chain of command. 3, ethics, basically the rules of the game. 4, sanctions, the consequences, good or bad, for following or breaking those rules. And 5, continuity, what's the plan for the future? According to the book, these 5 things, they define every single true covenantal relationship.
Now, to make this all a bit easier to remember, the author uses a handy acronym, THEOS, which is the Greek word for God. So let's break down what each of those letters actually stands for. First up, T is for transcendence. Now this is a big one. The main idea here is that God is the ultimate authority, totally distinct from and superior to everything he created. And what that means, in practical terms, is that no human institution, not the family, not the church, and definitely not the government, gets to claim absolute final power. They're all under a higher authority. Next, we have H for hierarchy. And look, this isn't about some top-down, rigid dictatorship. Not at all. In this covenant model, authority is all about delegation through representation. So God sets up representatives, think parents, pastors, civil leaders, and their job is to mediate his rule. And yeah, they're supposed to be obeyed, but, and this is key, only as long as they themselves are operating within the terms of the covenant. All right, E is for ethics. See, a covenant isn't some vague, fuzzy feeling. It's not based on what feels right. No, it has clearly defined rules. And according to the book, those rules are the laws you find in the Bible. They provide a fixed, objective standard for right and wrong. And following these ethics is absolutely central to the whole deal. Then we get to O for oath, which is also about sanctions. Okay, this is where it gets really serious. Covenants are sealed with a binding oath, and the book calls it a self-maledictory oath. That's a fancy way of saying you are literally calling down a curse on yourself if you break your promise. It couldn't be clearer. This sets up the sanctions, blessings and prosperity if you keep the covenant, and curses or punishment if you break it. And finally, we have S for succession or continuity. You see, a covenant is built to last. It's meant to be passed down from one generation to the next. But, and the book says this is a really crucial point, true inheritance is not guaranteed just by your bloodline. It's determined by your faithfulness to the terms of the covenant. The ones who are faithful, they are the true heirs. You know, the book's preface boils this all down in a really brilliant way, using 5 basic questions that you'd ask in pretty much any organization you join, right? Who's in charge here? That's transcendence. To whom do I report? That's your hierarchy. What are the rules? That's ethics. What do I get for obeying or disobeying? Those are the sanctions. And finally, does this outfit have a future? That's succession. It's a really simple way to grasp the whole concept.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The author makes this fascinating connection, arguing that this 5-point pattern isn't just random, it's a deep theological structure. He actually shows how it maps directly onto the famous 5 points of Calvinism, which you might know by the acronym TULIP. The big suggestion here is that this covenant model isn't just some new idea, it's a foundational framework for understanding God's entire relationship with humanity.
Okay, so that's the theory, right? We've got this 5-point model, but the big question is, how does this actually work in the real world? Well, the whole second half of the book is dedicated to showing that this isn't just abstract theology. It's a practical blueprint. You can even use it as a diagnostic tool for what's going on in society.
The author takes this framework and applies it to what he calls the 3 foundational pillars of any society. You have the family, the church, and the state. And his argument is that you can precisely measure the health or the decay of each of these institutions by seeing how they stack up against those 5 covenant points.
And this is where the argument gets super concrete, especially when you apply it to the family. From the covenant view presented in the book, the family is supposed to be a sacred institution under God with clear authority, objective morals, and a real purpose. But that's contrasted with what the book describes as the modern decline, where the family is now an institution under state control, with total confusion over authority, situational ethics, broken marriage oaths, and a complete loss of generational continuity.
So this all brings us right back to the book's title and its ultimate purpose. See, the goal isn't just to point out what's wrong with society. It's about offering a solution for achieving real success, or what the author calls dominion, which basically means responsible stewardship and growth. And this is the exact verse that gave the book its title. It's presented as a direct promise. Keep the words of this covenant, to do them so that you may prosper in all that you do. The message is clear. This blueprint isn't just for scraping by or surviving. It's for thriving. So when you boil it all down, that you may prosper presents this covenant idea not as some abstract, dusty theological concept, but as a practical, operational framework. It's argued to be the actual mechanism for rebuilding families, churches, and even whole nations to help them achieve real, comprehensive success.
In the end, the book lands on a pretty audacious claim, right? It's arguing that the solution to a lot of our modern problems lies in rediscovering and reapplying this ancient structure. And that leaves us with one heck of a final thought. Could an ancient blueprint really be the key to reshaping the entire modern world?